Hello, how are we doing today? Now, we're just going to go straight into it. The meeting has just literally finished. I thought I would start a little bit later in case we had to fast forward through anything, but it just seemed to have lasted a little bit over half an hour. But this is the meeting that we're going to have a look at, have a listen into. The Sustainable Development Panel of Norwich City Council. No idea what this means or entails, but this is the agenda, and hopefully have a listen in. Basically, because they talk about affordable housing. Hopefully, that's what caught my attention. But yeah, it's quite a short, which is probably why that was only half an hour long. So what we're going to do is we are going to pop over and look. We're in a different room. We are in the room that the doors open out onto the balcony, that part of Norwich City when you look at it, Norwich City Hall. So that's the room they are in. Right, let's find out what they're up to. If I can find the play button.
We'll make a start then, because we need to elect a chair. Could I have nominations for the chair, please? Councillor Oliver? Yeah. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carno, thank you. Do I have any other nominations? No. We'll move straight to the vote. All those in favour? Yep, that's carried. Councillor Fox, do you want to move over here?
Who did she say? I think I'm going to be going back and forth. Oh, don't sit there. Oh, for goodness sake. Good. So we get your head, back of your head. Fabulous. Fabulous start there.
Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Sustainable Development Panel. In the event of an emergency, there are no practice alarms planned for this meeting. So if an alarm sounds, please evacuate City Hall by going down the main staircase and out to the War Memorial in front of City Hall. Please would speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone. Please mute the microphones when not speaking. The meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Members of the committee may use electronic devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly, set them to silent, and do not use voice or camera flash functions. Okay, so then we're on to item 2, election of vice chair. Could I have nominations for the vice chair? Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Chair. Could I nominate Councillor Hampton, please?
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Conroy. Do I have any other nominations? Okay, so straight to the vote. Councillor Hampton.
Very much carried.
And my first time chairing a meeting at City Hall, so bear with. All those against? Abstentions? Okay, I can confirm that Councillor Hampton has been duly elected as vice chair.
Okay, I have put up the agenda in chat.
Do we have any apologies?
Yep, we've received apologies from Councillor Butterworth, and Councillor Ash-Jones is acting as his substitute.
And any declarations of interest? Councillor Laws?
Yes, my sort of usual declaration. Student landlord of off-street accommodation. There is reference in this document to purpose-built student accommodation, but I think the the impact is, as far as I'm concerned, is so sort of remote that I don't feel I need to absent myself, but just to declare that interest.
Thank you. And on to the item 5, the minutes. The minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of February 2026 were included in the agenda, and the minutes for the meeting on the 13th of January 2026 have been circulated. Can we confirm that these are an accurate record of the meeting? We'll take that as a yes. And now on to item 6, adoption of the Greater Norwich Local Plan Policy 5, Affordable Housing Supplementary Planning Document. And if I can hand over to our officers, Adam Nichols.
How you doing, Forgotten Britain? Are you okay?
Thank you very much, Councillor Fox. Welcome to those who don't know me. I've only been here about 3 months as the Planning Policy Manager. Took over from Mike Burrell, who some of you may know is the Greater Norwich Local Plan Manager now. So I'm still learning as well at some of the City Council ways and means. That also means that I don't have full knowledge of some of the things that have happened in the past, to state the obvious. Here, Sarah Ashurst, my manager as head of service, does have some of that broader knowledge. If there are any questions I can't answer, hopefully Sarah will be able to answer them. This is a relatively short paper, which hopefully you've all had the chance to read and digest. Clearly there'll be the chance for you to ask questions, and Sarah and I will be happy to answer them as appropriate. We have the need basically to update the existing supplementary planning document on affordable housing. As the paper sets out, there are a couple of reasons for that. The existing supplementary planning document dates back to 2019 and is based on evidence of some years before that. Yeah. The policy 5 of the Greater Norwich Local Plan, which deals with homes and sets out and has some supporting evidence for the need for the tenure split, of the appropriate tenure split of affordable housing in the City Council area and the Greater Norwich area more generally. And for a couple of reasons, we need to prepare a new supplementary planning document, which has been out for consultation, or is still out for consultation now because of the elections, delay caused by the elections, and a few other things. It's only really covering the 2 items, one of which is changing the tenure split. Currently, in the supplementary planning document, it's 85% social housing and 15% shared ownership. That's got to change to 65%, 35%, because that's what the supporting evidence of the Greater Norwich Local Plan says, and that's what the policy requires us to do. Basically, it's got to support the evidence, it's got to follow the evidence in relation to that. It's not about saying that we are I suppose, reducing the importance of affordable housing. We obviously all recognise, as officers know that as well as you do as councillors, how important affordable housing is. There's a very significant need for affordable housing across all tenures, which we, as council here and all councils, severely struggle to meet the need for a whole range of reasons: lack of land, viability, a range of other factors. But that the evidence shows that we need to change that tenure split to reflect the evidence to 65% social to 35% shared ownership. We also need to update the amount of money that we get in for what's called a commuted sum. So where affordable housing can't be delivered on site, and there are the most obvious examples, if you've got a flatted development and there might only be, let's say, 2 or 3 units which would be social housing or affordable housing of some other kind. It's just not practical for a lot of registered providers to manage it in a block. They just can't do it. It's insurance, management, conflict with owner occupiers. It's almost impossible. This is not a Norwich specific issue. It happens across the country. So in that case, where appropriate, we will get a commuted sum instead for that to be spent on affordable housing elsewhere. Now that might be affordable housing that we as City Council produce. It might be that another registered provider provides that. The important thing is that the amount of money that we secure as a commuted sum is now some years behind what the current value is. There's an index which is updated on a quarterly basis, a national index with the local factors, which indicates broadly what that cost is. or should be. And as set out in the paper, we are proposing to go to the current figure, which is about £1,600 per square metre. We will update the figure right at the point of adoption at full council to ensure that it is accurate at that point. Once it gets past that point, then we won't be able to change that figure again. It's quite a big increase on what the current figure of the SPD is, so I'm sure you can appreciate it is important that we're getting the right figure. If we're not getting enough figure for affordable housing, we're not going to be able to deliver as much affordable housing, a statement to the obvious there. So that hopefully should be relatively uncontroversial, that element of it. That in essence is what we're planning to do, as what we're consulting on currently for the SPD. A number of other areas of the current SPD we're saying have largely been superseded by changes to the planning practice guidance and the National Planning Policy Framework, which basically statements of national policy and guidance by the government. So we don't feel that we need to duplicate, or indeed we should duplicate some of those elements in our supplementary planning document. That's why the document you received is fairly brief for a supplementary planning document for those who have had experience of SPDs in the past. And unfortunately, in planning policy, we do have a reputation for writing long documents because we work in a complicated area of policy and delivery. So this is really very, very short indeed. We are preparing as many of you will know, we're preparing the new Greater Norwich Local Plan. We're in the very early stages of that, evidence gathering, considering broadly what we need to do. And there'll be lots more information on that in due course coming up, but we're expecting to adopt that plan in 2029. We will consider, obviously, as part of that, what the need for affordable housing is, what the tenure split should be, where those houses should be. But again, all that is for tomorrow. That's not within the scope of this SPD update. As the papers say, we must adopt this SPD by the end of June because the government has introduced a national, basically, drawbridge. And that drawbridge will go up at the end of June, and nobody anywhere across the country will be able to adopt any more supplementary planning documents. And fair to say, I think as officers, we're a bit disappointed by that because we find them very useful in providing more context, more assistance to applicants, councillors in implementing the policies that we have in the local plan. But this is a national decision we can do nothing about. It will also mean for the Greater Norwich Local Plan, we will need to consider how we strike that balance correctly between it not being too long and too detailed, but still giving enough information that can cover some of the territory we have in some of the other supplementary planning documents that we have prepared since the Greater Norwich Local Plan was adopted. That's probably all I need to say for now, but is there anything you want to add, Sarah?
Yeah, just a couple of things to add for your information. Really, the focus of this, albeit the tenure split has changed in the policy, this really is about the council getting money for that off-site commuted sum. In a previous briefing to the previous administration, we looked at delivery over the last few years, and between 2016 and 2025, so over a 10-year period, there were 20 major residential schemes approved. Only the council-owned schemes delivered affordable housing. And we were only able to do that through a mixture of these commuted sums from other developments and right to buy receipts. So the council really is the largest deliverer of affordable housing. So adoption of this SPD is really important to us being able to continue that strong delivery of affordable housing for the city in order to meet the need. And as Adam says, unfortunately, we are up against it in terms of timescales to get this adopted. And my kind of professional view is it would be really detrimental to the city and our delivery of affordable housing if we don't adopt this SPD. Thank you.
I need to find out what's.
Thank you for that. Would any members like to ask questions or speak on this topic?
SPD is all about.
Councillor Laws, is that a tentative hand?
Yeah,
Know what happened there, but
yes, it is. Just a couple of points of detail actually before anybody's got some more general points to make first.
I need to play this back and get these names, I think.
If I may, then thank you, Chair. Let's find the references first.
I mean, I know I pulled up the agenda, but what is the...
Excuse me, I have this written down somewhere. In the report, paragraph 3.17, just a comment really, talks about build to rent. This is on page 21 in the papers. It says schemes will usually offer longer tenancy agreements of 3 years or more. I just wonder if that needs to be slightly updated in light of the Renters' Rights Act, because tenancies will be periodic. There won't be sort of minimum periods other than, I think,
agenda
you
pack.
can't be evicted within the
chat.
first 12 months in any event.
Have a lot more.
But just a I mean, it's just a descriptive point, really.
Info.
The other point is seems to be a slight inconsistency. 3.16. This is the
supplementary planning
definition of
document.
net internal floor area. At 3.16, it says lobbies or corridors will not be included, but shared common space for residents should be included. That is in the context of provision for sort of older people. So whether that makes a difference, I'm not sure. But at 4.3 later on, the third bullet over the page on page 22,
Page 22.
it says therefore shared amenity or communal space. If there's lobbies or corridors, for example, shall not be included. There's a slightly different definition. I get lobbies and corridors not included, but communal areas such as lounges presumably are, but those two sort of definitions was not quite consistent with each other. Yeah.
Do you want to come back on those
Yes,
points?
thank you. We'll take both of those away. Certainly the one about the Renters' Rights Act. Yeah, we'll look into that and we'll check that consistency throughout the document. Thank you.
Did anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Oliver?
Thank you, Chair. So we've heard that it's incredibly important to adopt the document so that the council can continue delivering social housing as has happened over the last 10 years, you're saying that, yeah. And you know, hopefully that there's an ambition that some
Oliver,
other developers will also
party.
follow suit and change whatever pattern has led to them not delivering. Also, yeah, I heard that the council can use right to buy receipts, etc., which wouldn't be available to other developers. But I was just wondering, you know, do we anticipate there being a big change for the better in terms of social housing delivery by developers once we've adopted this?
So we're still getting the hang of these microphones. It is a very challenging market for delivering housing, full stop, frankly. Again, it's a nationwide issue. We're no different in Greater Norwich.
Who is this guy?
Typical brownfield sites on Anglia Square, the most obvious example, has only really come forward because Homes England were able to get involved in that. There are many difficulties, costs, risks associated with brownfield sites. It's almost always not the case that developers are just not trying hard enough and landowners to make it happen. It isn't viable in many cases. The risks, the costs, the uncertainties, the materials means when you
What is that guy? I cannot
equate that
find him
to
on the
sales values,
calculus,
you don't have a viable scheme, and therefore you probably aren't going to get funding from a lender and developer to do it. So as Sarah said, we as the City Council are obviously one of the bigger developers in the City Council area. We can get some grant funding direct from Homes England for some of these schemes, as well as, I think, as you say, Councillor Oliver, some right to buy money. So yes, we've got to be honest, this SPD isn't, if we adopt it, or hopefully it's adopted by council later in the month, there's not going to be a step change in delivery of affordable housing off the back of it. I've got to be honest there, because overall market forces are far more significant than just this SPD. What hopefully it will do is ensure that we are getting the right amount of money should we agree that commuted sum is appropriate from a developer in the specific instances where we think those commuted sums aren't appropriate. In other words, it just can't be, the affordable housing just can't be delivered within that scheme, and we could better deliver it elsewhere. But It's important to add also, obviously, we do try to maximise the amount of affordable housing that we get on all the sites in the City Council. We have an existing policy that says 28, I think at least 28% in City Council area and higher outside that. That is always the starting point for any negotiations with the developer, and we interrogate those figures hard, as you would expect us quite rightly to do as officers. So what I said earlier, just basically it just reflects the fact that it is a very difficult market, especially for brownfield sites, and it is not surprising that some of those figures show all too often that schemes are very, very difficult in viability terms.
Sarah, I think you want to add something to that.
Yeah, thank you. I think at the last planning committee, I think you were there, that there's been some recent evidence published by the National House Builders Federation where changes in policy and additional build costs has pushed the cost of a single dwelling up by about £76,000 per dwelling to the development industry. So as Adam says, it's a really, really challenging time. We're obviously in the position at the moment of starting the review of the Greater Norwich Local Plan, and obviously the viability of development is something that we have to consider in writing that plan. So we will be considering various policy interventions to try and see what we can do in order to help the market moving forward. And some of those, they might be quite difficult decisions that we need to make, but we need to look at all of them in the round to be able to deliver some affordable housing.
Councillor Hampton, you were next.
Yeah, just a quick one. I think at the time of these papers being published, I think the consultation's ongoing. There weren't that many responses. Has there been anything of interest coming since? And I presume that level is fairly normal for a consultation of this sort. And otherwise not got too much to ask on this. I think that the few of us who were on the council before may have obviously had to give a fair bit of consideration to this already, as it's gone through cabinet and full council before a consultation. And I think most of the questions that we may have had before have been covered off really well by this report and the introduction. So that's the only sort of outstanding thing in my head at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Hampton. Yeah, we've had now as many as 4 responses so far. It's obviously not unusual, especially for any 4-week consultation, which this is, that many of the comments we get then will come in the last day or two. People need to redocument, prepare comments, perhaps get them approved by managers or whatever the case may be. But because this is a very technical and quite limited area of focus, we're not expecting a huge volume of responses. Frankly, it's not about the amount of affordable housing or anything like that. It's as we discussed earlier, it's just about the commuted sum and that change in tenure split. So it's not generally of enormous wider interest such that we would expect a large volume of comments. That being said, clearly I can't rule out something coming forward and some big comments coming forward in the next day or two. We will obviously process those as quickly as we can, and then when it goes to cabinet, we will report to cabinet what those responses say and our proposed answers to those comments. And it might be some of them will say, well, we recommend a small change. Others we might say, well, fine, we note the comment, but we don't think a change is appropriate or necessary in relation to that. But yeah, I'm not expecting to be deluged over the next couple of days.
I've got a question, but did any other members wish to speak? Councillor Carlo?
Thanks very much.
You've turned your mic off. I think this is Councillor Denise Carlo from Nelson Ward, Green Party. But she's turned her mic off.
Sarah may be able to add some details. I was involved when this was prepared, but I think, as I said earlier, we've used what's called the BCIS all-in tender index for cost. BCIS stands for Building Cost Information Service. It's basically a national database of building costs, and the theory is that developers provide their costs for a whole variety of schemes, be they residential, commercial, communal, whatever they may be, for different house types, different house sizes, that kind of thing. They put them all into effectively a database, and then the database can then come up with what is broadly average costs for those different development types.
Database.
Again,
or
there's all manner of complications with the BCIS. It's not mandatory for anyone to put the figures in. Frankly, there's no real way of checking whether those figures are fully legitimate. Don't quote me on that, but that's the reality. So we know it's known that some developers, I'm not going to mention any names here, but some developers particularly generally don't submit any of their figures to this. So it's an imperfect set of figures, but it's
And maybe
probably the
that needs
best
to start
information there is out there,
changing.
and it has good credibility
Maybe
with planning
should.
inspectors and other built environment professionals. We use it ourselves, I think, as the City Council, at the very least as a starting point. If we're trying to price up a potential project or job, one of the first things to do is look at what the BCIS tells us. They won't necessarily give us the exact price, because obviously this has to be backwards looking in terms of what values are, what values come in, and then months later it then provides quarterly updates. But it does break down the costs into more local areas. So it's not a national
I'm
figure.
wondering
So I think Councillor
if
Carlo,
he is.
I can't recall exactly whether it will be a Norfolk figure or a Norwich figure, but it will be.
Do you think he is a councillor? Because I cannot find him anywhere on the councillor list to who he is. I'm wondering if he's got something to do with the developer, or something to do with the, what was it, SDP or SPD? Who is he?
The most appropriate basis for those figures, again, based on the information that has been put in, that has been submitted to the BCIS. So not by any stretch of the imagination perfect, but likely to be the best we can get.
I was going to say, I am not a maths expert in this, but these figures are kind of checked by our development strategy team. So Andrew Turnbull, particularly, he's all over this, and he will be the one kind of giving us that final figure per metre square that we can then charge developers. So the council's expert has looked at it, but that is not me.
Where we charge the developers. I think that was.
And that is, if these are, in a sense, taken from national figures to begin with, why do we then all the local authorities have their own SPD on affordable housing?
So we, not every local planning authority will necessarily ask for a commuted sum, and that's the purpose of this SPD, is on the basis of the evidence to say, if you can't provide it on site, if it's not viable on site, we want you to give us X amount of money, and we will then do Y with it. Not all authorities do that. Some of them are able in more viable areas, although they are incredibly limited now, just to be able to rely on their affordable housing policy in their local plan. But for example, at the moment, even building in London is proving unviable at the moment. So, you know, it's a really tough market out there. But yeah, we've chosen to go down this route so that we can get that money from commuted sums, so that we can actually build the affordable housing that people need.
I'll just answer that very briefly.
Norfolk.
And as Sarah's alluded to there, more rural authorities generally have a greater chance of those homes being provided, affordable homes being provided on site, or at least near site, because registered providers will generally be happier to take on, I don't know, package of 3, 10, 15, 20 affordable houses on a, let's say, development of 100, 150 dwellings. And it is still very hard, because for reasons you're probably all aware, registered providers themselves are in financial difficulties because of the need to retrofit properties and their own borrowing costs. So the interest from registered providers for all kinds of affordable housing is limited at the moment across the whole of the country. Again, as Sarah mentioned, even London, where values you'd expect to be at their heights, are severely struggling, in some cases getting literally no interest from registered providers to take on the affordable components of that. So in rural areas, generally there is greater chance of delivery on site if it's a greenfield site. As I said, there isn't really any reason most of the time why they should provide a commuted sum. There might be the case if it's a very special form of development, a build to rent, or some other particular factors, but in general, if it's a normal residential development, they should be able to provide it on site. But so occasionally, if they can't find a registered provider to take on the units, even then they might say, look, can we pay a commuted sum, because otherwise the development's not going to happen at all. But here in the city, where developments are more complicated, it's generally brownfield developments, it's going up, it's a mix, it is that much harder to get registered provider partners to take on some of those affordable units. Again, if it's one of our schemes, that's different. That's different. But if it's a market scheme, it is inevitably harder. And sometimes, even though our preference will be, can you deliver it on site? And I don't want you to get the impression we just say, well, yeah, fine, we'll just take a commuted sum straight away. That's not what the policy says. That's not what we seek.
All about the money.
We know there are very good reasons why it may just be completely impractical to do that on certain sites.
Could I ask a? Oh, sorry, Councillor Oliver. Okay, my question was just around with the viability, like when we do viability reviews, where development companies have made slightly more profit than was in the initial assessment, how frequently have we managed to kind of get money back from them? And
we always operate what's called a clawback in Section 106 agreements that we have. So, for example, there will be a viability review. We put that in all our Section 106 as we have done for a number of years. None of the schemes that we've kind of done it on have hit the trigger point for us to kind of do that clawback and viability review, but
Really?
they are always in there, and they do give us the opportunity to go back and review the viability and say, well, actually now you've made more money and we'll have a slice of that as well. Thank you very much.
sorry, could you just, what is the trigger point for that clawback, if you don't mind me asking?
It will be different for each legal agreement, so it depends on the scale, it depends on the phasing, it depends on the mix of units, so it will be different in each legal agreement, but we will negotiate that as part of the planning application. It won't be build it all and then we'll review it. It may be after 50% of the units are built, it might be after 20% are occupied, it depends on the scheme.
Jeez.
Did any other, oh, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I don't know if my question's slightly tangential.
Don't
The
turn
housing
your
stock has some
mic off.
is administered by a housing association. Like I think most of the London authorities, that happened some years ago, and yeah, how that compares to what we're doing here. Presumably, us remaining the landlord for our housing stock is optimal in terms of delivery. Like, you know, are there any houses being built in other authorities where they don't actually own them?
I wouldn't actually be able to answer that question, but it's something that we could look into as part of the next review of the local plan and thinking about how we might do this into the next plan review. Yeah.
Can I add to that briefly? There's been lots of consolidation in the registered providers market. Again, as some of you will know, for economies of scale, same as probably many other businesses, some of the smaller registered providers have simply struggled to raise the funding to deal with some of the risk on their portfolio. So over the last sort of 5 years, particularly, there have been merger after merger after merger. And so from originally when many RPs were set up, it was the specific authority sort of outsourced their stock to an individual registered provider. And I think my memory is correct, and it may be wrong. It was normally sort of one per authority that was set up, and then gradually over time since then, I think this is going back to the 1990s, I think, when that originally happened, there's been more mergers, more consolidations, and that the pace of that has increased over the last few years. The idea being that bigger registered providers have got more greater buffers, got greater borrowing capacity, can balance balance risks in one area against lower risks in other areas. That does mean that there are some geographical differences across the country in terms of willingness and appetite of registered providers to build houses, which is not necessarily specific to the location where the development itself is taking place. It may reflect their broader ability to bring forward schemes. Sometimes if they've committed all their borrowing on existing schemes, they simply haven't got any money to do anything else. Even if it's a great scheme, they might like to do it, they simply haven't got the money to do it. And so you find in some areas, actually, there is still competition. It's a bit happenstance because that's where the registered providers have got money. They've got a bit of appetite. They've got or perhaps one scheme has fallen down somewhere else, and they've now got a window to take on, I don't know, 100 more dwellings somewhere else. Other parts of the country, they may simply say, look, which I know is the case in parts of the east of England, they've just said, sorry, we can't do anything for the next 2 years. We're fully committed in our funds unless we get more funding from central government or somewhere else. We simply can't commit to anything, which is then where developers find themselves in difficulties when they go out try to market their properties to get a registered provider partner. Then they're saying, look, we've tried really hard and we have had no interest. What do we do?
Nobody's buying.
That's when we may have to take some pragmatic decisions and say, in that case, we can see you have tried hard. We'll have to take a commuted sum in order to ensure that development comes forward. Again, that's less relevant directly to the City Council. That's more for rural authorities, but it is to say that there isn't necessarily any.
Sorry, we do have a helicopter going over at the moment. not complaining, at least it's not a fighter jet.
Specific local, ultra-local geographical factors behind why some areas may have more registered provider interest or less registered provider interest.
Councillor Jones, was that you saying that your question's just been answered? Okay, I saw Councillor Stootley indicate. Do any other members wish to speak before that? Okay, in that case, Councillor Stootley.
Thank you. Yes, I'll just comment as a portfolio holder. Excuse me. No, I think there is some work to be done with viability assessments and greater scrutiny of those viability assessments, especially those submitted by the developers. And then I know that we look at them ourselves independently, but I think some greater scrutiny across the council where members get more opportunity to see those figures and question them themselves. But I think regarding this policy, I made a few notes. I'll just read them out, which is quicker. So this SPD performs an important technical role in updating our methodology and ensuring we can continue to secure affordable housing contributions after the June deadline. So I note that it increases the contribution rate significantly and provides greater certainty for applicants and decision makers. So looking ahead, there will be questions for the Greater Norwich Local Plan Review about how effectively affordable housing policies are delivered in practice. But I think that those questions are ones that can't be addressed necessarily through this SPD. But I would remind members of the panel and members of the public that with the deadline not closing till next week, you can still submit your own responses to which the council will be required to answer. So if there are any further questions after this, thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, in that case, we'll move to the vote. So the recommendation in the report is that the Sustainable Development Panel recommend that Cabinet and full Council adopt the SPD. So we're voting on that recommendation. Could I have votes for?
Okay, just before you do, let's just take a look at that document. Which I think is this one. Okay, are you with me? Yes, you are with me. Now, God, there's so much. I mean, there's 44 pages. Well, 42 added to the agenda. Let's put it that way, because 2 pages are the agenda. I mean, that is... Okay, so the actual question was, with the affordable housing, what was being asked within the vote? Sorry, I'm going backwards. Okay. God, I'm not even sure I'm looking at the right bloody page. Right, the supplementary planning document supports the interpretation and effective implementation of Greater Norwich Local Plan. So I think this is what they are now about to vote on to continue forth. 4-week period of consultation to take place in May. But they said there's still another week left, so let's see how they get on with the vote. Well,
and so that has passed.
It's passed.
that's the end of the meeting.
Oh my God, that literally was the end of the meeting. Oh my God, what on earth is all of this? Wowzers. Okay, well that's done. That's it. And yeah, catch you later.